We're going to go ahead and get started on the ballast side of this project. As you can see, we've got quite a few things here that's going to be included in this. We've got our custom fat sacks right here that are going to be installed into the lockers and into the bow. We'll show you how to get the measurements of that here in our first video. We've got our 3 Ballast King pumps that are going to pump at 15 gallons per minute. These guys are going to fill up those bags at a much quicker rate than the original pumps did. We've got 3 sets of these brass through hulls here. They come apart into pieces. And we'll be drilling through the bottom of the boat, pulling those up through and sealing them off so that way we can attach our valves and our barb so we can run all of the new plumbing to those pumps. We've got our wiring kits. But for this boat, it's going to be a little different. We're not going to add in switches. We're going to use the OEM fill empty switches. And because we're doing that, we are going to use a relay box. Since prior to this, there were 2 pumps per bag, and now we're going to be going down to 1 pump. We have to wire it up correctly so that way we can still use the same switches on the singular pumps. Some tools you're going to need for this. We're going to need a pipe wrench to tighten down our through hulls once they go through. We're going to have to cut a lot of this hose, so we got our hose cutters here. Got a screwdriver. I custom fabricated these tools. They're just pieces of plywood that are the same diameter as this through hull. So when I lay this down into the area of the boat where we're going to be installing these through hulls, I can tell if I'm going to have enough clearing space to be able to fit that whole valve. They've got a magnet on the back side of them, so when I go underneath the boat to mark where I'm going to be drilling through, I'm able to use another strong magnet on the other side, and it's going to show me exactly where I set this up top, help me get that center point. Because we're drilling through fiberglass, respirator, and some goggles, I recommend long sleeves and other stuff so you don't get it all over your body. We got our hole saw here so we can drill the right size hole to run that through hull, and then a drill. I also created this system. It's just a washer locked on there by a nut, and what that'll allow us to do is when we're ready to install these through hulls, I can put my bead of 4200 fast cure sealant around the lip of this through hull. I can string my wire through here, and that washer is going to allow it to sit and rest there. And then I can feed this up through the hole that I drill in the boat, pull it all tight. Obviously this spinning washer will be off, but then I'll be able to spin that down and tighten it up once it's on the other side of the boat. We'll have a pretty extensive section talking about how to wire up these pumps so that way they can be used with the OEM switches. And we'll show you guys how to do that. But initially it's going to be using 2 relays per pump. And since we got 3 pumps, it'll be 3 relays. Since this boat has a hard tank in the middle, that we don't have access to, we're not going to pull that out. We're just going to play off of it with our bow bag. We're still going to upgrade the pump so it fills faster, but the way we drain it, we're going to create a way so that the tank won't crack with the amount of pressure these pumps pull when they're draining. So we'll show you how to do that as well. Other than that, we're going to start off by getting these in place and finding where we're going to install our through hulls, and then we'll start drilling that. All right, so here we've got our rear ballast tank. We can just remove this top carpeting panel, and that's going to reveal everything else that's here. It does look like it's full, so we'll have to get a drain pump out and suck all that water out, unfortunately. And then we'll be able to pull this tank out. There's just some screws holding it in, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem at all as far as removing it. All right, so we're just gonna drill a hole in the top of this tank with a hole saw and then stick our pump in there to suck out all the water. All right, now that we got that empty, we're just gonna cut off any hoses and wires that are going to this tank so we can get it removed. So we went ahead and removed our divider panel as well, and that's gonna give us access to the screws that are holding down the rear of the tank. So we can get that removed. All right, so I got that screw out. I'm just gonna lift up the front here and scoot the tub forward. I've actually got another fill hose right here. So I went ahead and drained all the water out of this side as well. We're gonna cut everything off once again and get this removed. All right, now that we got that out, we can go ahead and start removing the seats. We're gonna go ahead and demo this cooler out. We'll need it removed for when we install our bags in here in the future. So I'm just using an oscillating tool. We're just gonna go in here and cut it all out, and we should be able to pull it out chunk by chunk. Because it's fiberglass, I'm wearing gloves, long sleeve, and a respirator to keep all that fiberglass out. All right, so the first step in getting our custom ballast system done in this boat is going to be measuring for the custom bags we do. And in order to do that, all we need is a notepad and our tape measure. And I'm just gonna walk you through. But essentially what we'll be doing is going into each cavity and measuring the height, width, and length of each section inside of the cavity, writing it down, putting on our diagram where we want our fill spot to be, as well as where our vent is going to be. So I'll walk you guys through that, and it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so you can see we're in this cavity now. Our bag kind of has this shape to it, where it's going to be shorter on this side and then go to an angle, longer on this side, and then this will be the same for the top and the bottom of the bag. Obviously for the side profiles of our bag, it's going to be this long side here and then this short side with the angle here. So we're just going to mark down all those measurements. We want to keep everything about an inch below where this top part is, because the bag isn't perfectly square. It's going to round out a little bit and get a little bit higher in the center part. We don't want that pushing up on the top of our locker too much, as well as we want to leave room for the hardware on top for venting and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and get those measurements done. I'm just going to start off by doing this shorter angle here. We've got 36 inches. So that's going to fill short side, and then the short side of this bag. We're going to go ahead and do this angle now. And that angle is 25 inches. We're going to get the height for our bag here. We'll go with 20 inches for height. And then we'll get the length of our bag here. will be 51 inches. And then we're gonna get the distance of the rear part here. Which will be 19 inches. So now we've got the bottom, the top, and then the two sides of the bags all filled out. The top is going to get the vent at the farthest front, most middle section. And then we will put our fill at the rear center section here on the diagonal piece. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we want those. I'll add those notes in when we're done here. For this bag, it's going to be the exact same thing mirrored on that side. So I'm just going to write mirror for, that'll be our port side over there. And that's going to be all the measurements we need for that bag. And we're going to go ahead and head up to the bow and get the measurements for that. There is no ski locker bag for this one. It does have a tank there that we can't currently remove. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that. All right, so we are now going to get the measurements for the front of our bow up here. That is just going to be basically drawing this V shape and measuring everything out just like we did in the rear. We'll have our vent up here at the very front of the bag and our fill on one of these sides. I'll take a look at the tank and figure out where that's at before we mark that off. But initially, our bag is going to look like an arrow like that. So we're going to get all those measurements for both the bottom and the top and the front. All right, so we've got all the measurements for the bottom of the bag as well as the top. Now we are going to take the measurements for the rear of the bag. So we know the top up here is 18 inches. We know the bottom is 16 inches. Now we need to get the height that our bag's gonna be. And we'll go with 7.5 inches. And our angled height is 10 inches. All right, it's a little confusing, but I've got everything written down here so we can get those sent off. And then we'll have our custom bags made. All right, so we're gonna start off by working on our ski locker here. As you can see, we've got the existing tank along with all the plumbing for it. So we're going to get these pumps pulled out, get this current through hull pulled and capped. And then I believe we'll have room for two of our through hulls in here, one on this side and one on that side. And then we'll put our third one back towards the engine bay. I'm thinking we'll still mount the pumps in the back and just run our tubing up through underneath the gas tank here. There's enough clearance for that. As far as the through hull goes, we may need to put an elbow on the top here in order to accommodate for the height of this space, as it's not very tall. We don't have a lot of room in the engine bay of this boat to put some new through hulls in, so we're going to make do with what we got, and it'll still be a very functioning system overall. So before we get to the installation of the through hulls, we're just going to rip some of this stuff out. So now that we have our area fully cleared here, we're going to go ahead and start the process of getting our through hulls drilled. This is going to be that same size as our through hull, the space we need to fit. We're going to go right here with one, and then the other one will probably end up being on the adjacent side over here. We're gonna leave this here, go underneath the boat, and I'll bring you guys under there with me with the other magnet, so that way we can get our spot located for that. And then we'll come back up here, make sure all the adjustments are good. Then we're gonna trace our magnet, and then begin the drilling process for that through hole. All right, so now that we've got our piece set up top here, we're just gonna use our other magnet and find where it locks on, and it's right there, and that's a good surface to go around. So I always like to go back up top, just double check where that piece of wood is, make sure we're still in a good clearance area, and then we're gonna come back down here, circle where this magnet's at, use this center piece, mark our center piece, and then we can drill. So I'm just gonna go back up top and check real quick. All right, so we're all good on top. We're just gonna go ahead and mark. We can pull that off. And we've got the center of our circle marked. So next we can go ahead and begin the drilling process for this. All right, so we now have that hole drilled. We're gonna go ahead and do the exact same thing for our next two holes. On the adjacent side of where we just did that one, and then one will be further down in the engine bay. All right, so for our last through hull here, we've got just enough room in this area where we can fit it. It is kind of sloped there, so I put some tape on the side of the magnet. And I'm just gonna place it down right in the spot there. And that should give us plenty of clearance to get that through hull mounted. So I'm just gonna go in on the other side, just like I've always done. Make sure that magnet gets attached there and that we have enough clearance down there and a good mounting area. As you can see, we've got a good area here to go through with our through hull. So we're gonna do what we have done with all the other ones. All right, time to drill. All right, so now that we have all of our holes cut, we can go ahead and install our underside through hull fitting. We're gonna use our marine adhesive here. It's the 3M Fast Cure 4200. We're gonna put a thick bead of that all the way around the base of this fitting. And then I showed you this before, but this is the tool I use to pull that fitting up through there by myself. If you have two people, you can obviously have one person go underneath and shove it up, and then put this nut on the other side. But since it's just me, I will put the bead of adhesive on there, or sealant, and then I'm gonna run this, it's just a wire with a washer and nut on the end of it that will catch there on that side of the fitting. And then I can feed this wire up through the hole, pull everything up tight, and then spin that nut on. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that adhesive on, crawl under the boat, just feed the wire up to the point where I can grab it, and then I'll bring you guys in the boat and we'll pull that up through and put the nut on. As you can see, there's a channel in this fitting, and we're just gonna wanna go right over the top of that. All right, so we got that on there, got the whole channel filled up. I'm just gonna feed this through, like I said before. And then I'm gonna crawl under the boat, feed it up through the hole, and I'll take you in the boat on the other side. All right, so as you can see, I've got my wire here. So we're just simply gonna, I'll feed the nut over the wire, and we're slowly just gonna pull. Got the fitting there. I just pulled this really tight. This stuff takes about 24 hours to cure. once it's cured, we'll be able to tighten that nut down even tighter with a pipe wrench, but for now, we'll just get as tight as we can with our goes like that. So now I'll just drop this wire out and we'll do the exact same thing in our hole over here and then our hole in the rear as well. All right, so that is the last of the 3 through hulls. Next, we will be installing the valves on top of that, but first we got to let those cure for 24 hours. All right, so these have had time to cure. So now we're just going to go ahead and tighten those nuts down. All right, so we got that tightened down. We're actually going to cap off our previous 3/4 fitting here. We got a cap there, so we're just going to put some Teflon tape around it. All right, so that's capped off nice and tight. We're gonna add a 45-degree on here, just so that our fitting isn't running up into the door here on access to the locker. All right, so now we can run our hose underneath the gas tank here, just kind of out and around, and then we'll shoot this other one across this way and come over here. All right, so now that we got all of our through hulls installed with the valves, we're gonna get our pumps mounted so that we can get our plumbing to run. I basically just cut this panel here out of a piece of our 3/4 inch plastic, and I'm going to slide it up on this spot because we don't really have a good spot to mount the pumps, but if we put this panel here, that'll give us room, and we'll do another panel on the adjacent side. So I'm gonna just use some L brackets here on the base to go into the fiberglass. We'll drill in up here to go into the fiberglass, and then I've got some self-tapper screws that'll go through on this metal bracket over here. That'll hold everything plenty steady. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started with the brackets, I'm just putting some self-tappers over here. So now we have this panel mounted here. We're just gonna go ahead and use 4 screws and mount our pumps. We want to make sure to keep the pump fins, or like where the actual pump spins, on the bottom in case any water leaks out. And we'll just mount each one of these. Mount one pump here, one pump probably down here. All right, so now that we have our through hull there, our through hull there, and our through hull there, we need to connect them to our 3 pumps we have mounted, 2 of which are in this locker. 1 is in this locker. So we're going to take our hose here. We are going to run it on top of the gas tank to these 2 and mount those run those hoses to these 2 pumps, and then we'll run this one to that pump over there. And then from there we'll be able to run hose back up and around to fill the tank, and then these 2 pumps will fill the bags, or one of these ways. I don't know which pumps I'm going to use for what yet, but that is the gist of what we'll be doing next.
So here we are at the back of the boat. taking a look at the relay panel that we built for this 210. We wanted to be able to maintain the stock buttons that were built into the system previously, and not have to replace anything or add new buttons of our own, so that we could keep that nice classic Nautique styling. This boat previously had 6 aerator pumps installed in it, and we now have only 3 reversible pumps doing the same job. So to be able to convert all those 6 different signals down to 3 signals, we built this relay system. It looks like there's a lot going on, but at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. You have your inputs right here. These are coming from a harness that we added to the boat. We stripped back all of the old wiring for all those different aerator pumps and brought it back to where it all localizes at one point. And then we added a new harness to extend to over here. This is that harness you see right here. There are 6 different inputs, as you can see, for a fill and drain for each different pump. Depending on which pump you select and if you wanted to fill it or drain it, it is going to send a signal through one of those wires. And that signal is going to turn on one of these relays right here. Those relays are going to send that signal back out into this other distribution block so that it can turn on one of those pumps. It is all ran and powered from this circuit breaker right here. That circuit breaker is grounded directly to the powered directly to the battery switch, so that there's no sort of current draw coming off of these, even though there shouldn't be if the switches are turned off, but obviously you want to cover your bases. So all of this is ran directly back to that battery switch. And then it is also grounded directly right to the battery. This fuse block is what is powering all of the different relays and giving power to the actual pumps. So you can see these larger wires right here. Those are the actual positive and negative power wires for each different relay. So when you turn on a signal wire, and in layman's terms, what is happening is this small signal voltage is coming through, and it is turning on one of these relays, which is going to give you a higher voltage and run back out, like I said, directly back through that distribution block, enabling you to have a less amount of large wires with high current and high voltage running through them. This is a pretty simple and easy way to convert the 210, make it able to run those reversible pumps. There's lots of different options and ways you can do this. We went with this one because it's easy to understand for future owners, and it's very replaceable. Let's say you have a relay blowout. You don't have to rewire anything. All you would do is you would unscrew the relay and you would unclick it and you'd put a new relay in. And you'd be back on the water, good to go. Same with the fuses here. You just pull this off and pull out a fuse and put a new one back in. Again, making it nice and simple and serviceable. If you have any questions or would like some guidance on how this all works, we'd be more than happy to give that to you. But this is just a better understanding of how we wired up this 210 to be able to run our reversible pumps.
Okay guys, welcome back to the 210 project. Today we're going to finish up on the ballast. What we have to finish is running the rest of the hoses and getting all the pumps plumbed in, and then plumbing in the bags from the pumps and getting everything finished up. The custom relay panels already installed that we built to still be able to use the stock control buttons and not have to add switches. All of that's installed, all the wiring is done, and it's just pumps just need to be plugged in and plumbed, which is kind of the final step. We waited for this just because we were running a lot of wiring and hoses get in the way of wiring, so it's easier to run all your speaker wiring or any type of electrical you're doing before you put all these hoses in that take up a ton of space. So yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so we got this all cleared out. I put this in here just so that we have clearances. So like I confirm that this hose fits right here. We've done a few of these before, so I had an idea of where to put it. But it also just helps to like keep the bag positioned once you're putting it in, so you have an idea of where everything's gonna lay out. So we got our bag right here. These ones are custom made for us to fit the 210s. So they got our name on them too as well. So ignore that. So we're gonna get it laid in here. I don't know if you can see that. Here's the name on it and everything. But you can see it's shaped for the rear bow. So we'll lay it right in. That's kind of what it will look like. Obviously the sides are a little bit different right now because it's folded up still. The first time you fill it, it will kind of shift and you have to move it around again. But this gives you a good idea. The fill line will run all the way to the rear. It'll go underneath this side of the bag here, all along the bow, go right to the rear. Then the vent line will come up and we'll probably wrap it this way, or we'll do a longer one. Might do a longer one to that side. We'll see how it looks. But yeah, let's get cutting hoses. So there's multiple ways you can do this. Depending on where it is, you might need to bring a pre-measured piece up, kind of measure your length. I'm just gonna lay the spool right next to the boat here so that I can just pull it in. I took the bag out because I know where the end is going to be. I'll leave it along so we can get an exact fit. Once the bag's back in, I'll trim it. But we know where it's going to go along the side here, so. So you can see it coming off here and going down along the side of to the rear of the boat where the fillet and drain is. We'll install a crimp end. So depending on what type of setup you're doing, you can do multiple different types of fittings. These ones are just the standard twist on. But for a more permanent fit, depending on like on the hose ends to like a quick connect fitting and stuff that you don't need to service, we'll put a crimp end on there so that it's a lot tighter and never have to worry about it vibrating loose or anything. So this is a hole stretcher or hose stretcher. You don't need to use one of these, but it does make it easier. So here's the other style. This is a number 346, I believe. And it's gonna be pretty tight to get over it right there. So we stretch that. With a vent hose, depending on the setup, you always want them to be somewhat pretty level and consistent, or else you can get air bubbles and stuff. But it's not the end of the world. I just like to make them look nice. So just kind of figuring out how I'm gonna run this one. Okay, so I got my vent line here. It's gonna wrap where the vent comes out right here, just barely not visible, around. It's a little bit long still, but it'll look something like that, so that it has nice room to rise up and down without having a ton of extra slack in the way. You can just go up and down like that. So this right here, one-way check valve that we put in so that when the pumps are sucking out, they can hold a vacuum to get all of that water out of the bags. So we'll throw this in on the vent line. Usually I try to put it somewhere that the water will always get out of it if possible, so somewhere kind of level so that it will drain out each way. If anything, you want it tilted this way so that the water pushes back out and can drain out your vent, so it kind of self-winterizes then. So yeah, we're gonna throw this bad boy in. It's gonna go right by our vent output hole. Okay, so we have our last connection to do right here. This is already pre-cut to length, so all I need to do is slide on a crimp fitting, stretch it, and we're good to go. Another benefit to these is there's a lot less metal to cut the bags up with, so there you go. We'll lay here like this. Obviously it looks a little funky right now because it's all vacuumed, but it will look something along the lines of that. So you can see here comes the vent will come up this line right here, and then it'll go through this check valve. Water, as you can see on the arrow, goes out. Can't go back that way. And then this will just rise up and down with the bag as it goes, giving it plenty of tension. And the slack on the vent side of the bag's over here, so it'll just come up and down with it nice and smooth. But that way, if there's any water that gets stuck right here, pretty easy to blow right up. And you can always just disconnect this if you need to and replace it if it goes bad. We're gonna keep on going here. We're over on the port side of the boat now. Here we have the two pumps for this side. This one right here is gonna be the floor tank up front, and then that floor tank is gonna push through to a bow bag underneath the seats. So that will run all of this. This will be just the rear port pump. So the one that we have all these lines coming through from here is for this bow pump here. One thing to note here, and we'll throw some pictures in to show. This was the first time we've done this kind of setup here, where on the back side of this is all the relay controls, but we're not putting in standalone switches. We're using stock switches on the 210. When we did that, I built this panel, and on the other side, which you can see now with some pictures, there are all of the relay controls, all the fuses. The one problem with this design is it's kind of hard to get to the fuses, since they're all on the other side of this. You have to unscrew it just to get to the fuses, which isn't terrible, but it's not the most practical. On a recent boat, customer boat, we actually did before this, but I had already designed this panel and installed it and done everything for this boat, so kind of in between there. We did another one, and we put the fuse panel on this side with all the relays still on the other, so all the junk you don't need to get to is still out of the way of getting to anything. And then there's just a nice centerpiece where the new style is, where the fuses all are, so you can easily access them and service those. So yeah, we'll throw some pictures in of that as well, just to give you an idea. That is something we offer. If you're doing this kit, we will build you one of these panels, all pre-wired, so all you have to do is pull back the existing ballast harness and wire it in. So yeah, but we're gonna get to plumbing these hoses here. We originally had this one vertical, but just with the routing of hoses, it doesn't make sense to do it that way. So the way this one will work is I flip this pump around as well. Since you can see this, the flat side versus this side, it's not flipped, so it's got that nose. And this will be the fill. It will go in and then back out. So it will look something like that for the out, and then the drain will be like that coming through. So that should give us good suction and good everything here. So yeah, let's get going. about it more, I might relocate this one over a bit to give myself more of a radius here. Just so that that hose is in at a super tight angle. I think that would help with it. Just because the gap here is pretty close. And the hose doesn't like to make super tight angles. So we'll see here. Might have to relocate that over a little bit. It's going to kind of do the same path that the other side did. And that one's pretty centered. That worked real well. So I'm thinking about moving it over to about here. That would look better, I think. But let's get these plumbed in and then we'll go from there and see. So what I'll actually do is I'll grab a piece of hose and just mock it up against the other one and get the length off of it. How it makes it nice and easy. So I just took a reference off of the other side, about the same length. Doesn't need to be perfect, but to the millimeter or anything. Finger measurement is plenty close. Of course, make sure not to clip your fingers, because that would hurt. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm building something, I'm forgetting everything all the time. I swear, I can never remember a thing. So you'll see me not use this on certain things, like the pumps. The diameters are close enough that if you do that, the hose stretcher, it stretches it out to a radius, diameter on the inside that is just too big, even with the hose clamps. You'll get a lot of failure and leakage out of it. So depending on the thing, you gotta stretch them, and sometimes you don't. For these bigger 1/8 inch fittings, you gotta stretch them out. Now we just plumb the vent in. So we'll clip this in here for now. Okay, we got our piece of hose here. So get her plugged in off the vent and then cut her for the finish length. Or sorry, plug it into the check valve and then get our finish length off of that. Always double check the flow of your check valves, because that's an easy one to mess up, and then you'll be chasing your tail until you realize it's just a check valve that won't let the system drain because it's just opening. Or it's not venting because it's not opening at all. So now we have that line laying here. And we want it to kind of match how the other one is. So it'll go somewhere along there. Honestly, for now, I think this is pretty much right on the money. I'm gonna put it on, but just in case, I'm gonna put a screw-on twist clamp instead of the crimp one, just in case I gotta adjust it in a bit. But I think we'll be okay with this length here. There. So that's nice and ran. Looks great. Okay, so for this fill drain hose, we're gonna start at the rear here. Kind of just go along that same process of laying it from your known reference point and then go backwards. So yeah, I think it would be better if we moved it over a bit, because anytime you're putting it right where the radius is, it's going to naturally want to pull. Whereas if I have the radius right here, but the inlet of the pump right about here, it's straight on, not wanting to pull up on that fitting or anything. So we'll probably move it. See how even with the hose clamp, that stays right on, nice and consistent? That's what you want. It comes flexes just a tidbit, but with the hose clamp there, we'll keep it nice and square. And then that will still be out of the way for the bag. And it has plenty of flex if it needs to go that way. So yeah, beautiful. So now, one nice thing about staggering these pumps is I can run a line right across the front of this one down to our fill drain thing. I think what we'll end up doing is we'll put a zip tie right here to hold this. So, just doing a little bit of an overview here. This bag will sit actually a little bit more like that once it's seated in here. But we have our bow pump and our port rear pump. So the only thing we have left to put on is that extra fill line from the through hull. But yeah, this one fills right in to that, and then the vent comes off right here, wraps around just like the other side that I showed you guys me doing that vent or that check valve and everything, right off into the side of the boat, into the vent hole. As I mentioned, this design is not the best. We have updated that since, but we just don't have the time to redo this whole panel right now. We got lots of other stuffs on the book as well. But yeah, we'll give you more of a general overview once everything is done, and we'll even do a test cycle with everything as well. So. Okay, so we're down here in the bow, or technically not the bow, technically underneath the floor, but just call it the bow tank because this will feed right here off, and then we will run a hose that way. Here, I can adjust this underneath the floor and up along the same path as this hose down here, to have a 1-inch line going to the forward tank, the bow tank, or the bow bag. You can see here all of our different lines. Here are where our other 2 through holes are. We have one right next to the V-drive and 2 right here. In my opinion, if we were to redo this, we'd probably do it in a different spot we've done it. We were just trying this to mix it up to see if this works better. It does not. In the past, we've also done them right along the runners, the rear stringers, right underneath the muffler and exhaust and everything, and that seems to work better. There's just more room back there, and you don't have to run as much hose everywhere. So this right here is going to be the this right here will be the bow and this floor tank fill. So this line goes back, and then it goes through the pump, and then it comes back to this and goes down into there. This right here is the starboard side. You can see these are all at kind of weird angles to make everything work together. It's pretty tight down here. So it definitely took some figuring out with some different fitting ends and stuff, and going back and forth to the hardware store a couple times to get different brass fittings. Overall though, I think it turned out pretty good. As you can see, nothing is hose clamped, just test fitting still, before we do the final assembly on everything here and get it all cranked down. But that gives you a good idea of how this area is going to work. With these tanks, one thing to note, you can crack them if you overfill them or if you put too much of a vacuum on them. So it's something to be aware of. You can put a pressure relief on these if you need to, so that if you get to a certain, I think it's 1 psi negative vacuum or vacuum pressure, that valve opens up and it won't crack these tanks. But yeah, that's about it for this moment. Okay, so this is our new through hole here. I spent a decent amount of time off camera figuring out exactly where I want it here, playing around with different fittings off the ends and stuff. What ended up working well for this one was doing a 90 up to the valve, and then off the valve do a 45 right here. That gets the barbed fitting here threaded in at a nice angle to keep coming up along these lines here. So yeah, get this hose stretched here, and all of this is still loose right now. I'm just cutting the hose, and then we'll go through and tighten all those fittings down. But I don't want to crank on things if I'm gonna have to readjust it all. So this will go through like that. And then it's gonna slide down nicely like that. So now you can see it will just come right up. Obviously I can twist that around right now, but that will be nice. Plenty of engagement on those barbs all the way down on it, and it will come up, go right that way to the pump. So yeah, let's jump to the other side and get the pump fitted. So here we are up at the front. We got this bow bag just laying in here, waiting to get finished installed. So up here we have the vent, and then the fill is down in the starboard corner. So we'll run a vent line up to the vents on the driver's side where the existing ones are, and we'll reuse the through hull vent from the hard tank and basically route it to this instead. And then we'll run a new 1-inch line from the fill all the way down through the floor to the old vent of the hard tank. So that will become a drain / fill line. It will pass through, and it will pass through to this bow bag up here. So yeah, let's get to it. Should be pretty easy. Yeah, one thing we got to make sure is we just put enough of height in this vent so that it is the highest point like we've talked about, but this one's pretty easy. The only part that's a little difficult is underneath the dash, and then running that new line all the way up here. Just a little tight through there. Getting underneath the dash, again, I'll do my best, but it might be a little bit difficult, so it might be a follow-up depending on if I can get it filmed correctly or not. So yeah, let's keep going. So we got this all buttoned up here. You can see the vent line going up through. Grab this and show you. Here is the fill line. That is just going down underneath through the floor. Okay, so we're pretty much all finished up with this thing. I'm itching to get the ice cleared in the spring and throw this thing in. One bummer with doing winter projects is once you're done, you still have to sit there and look at it. So today we're gonna get the ballast all leak down tested. So we're gonna fill up everything and check all the hose clamps, all the fittings, make sure everything fills and drains correctly, check the through hulls, just do a test of the system. Once we get it in the water, we'll obviously do this again. multiple times, but this is just an initial test to make sure everything's set correctly. To do that, we'll put a fake lake on the through holes that we installed for this build. It's the same style of fake lake you would use to run this boat if you're going to run it in your garage or something. So you just, it looks like a toilet plunger, and you stick it to the bottom of the boat. Yeah, we're going to get going on this. As you can see, the panels are all in to support everything and keep the bags from pushing into the engine compartment. Yeah, let's get going, guys. So we're up here at the helm of the 210 here. As you can see, we have our control panel here, and we have starboard, port, and belly ballast. So these are the stock buttons that we integrated the relay panel into to make work. So the way these work is you click it, and you can hear the pump clicks on. Same with port, same with belly. And then if you want to reverse them to drain, you just hold and it drains. So yeah, we did this so that we could keep that stock look here with all these nice panel already built in. We didn't want to add switches somewhere. So this gave us the ability to put the reversible pumps in while still maintaining that OEM factory look. So this is a little tricky by yourself. That when you have to run to the hose and stuff, can be a little bit tricky to get the pumps to suction. So you just gotta kind of mess with it. And there it goes. You can hear the pitch of the pump change, so it primed itself and it is filling. So as you can see, we got the through hull here, or the fake lake suctioned up here. And then it comes through the through hull that's down there and up through this hose right through there. We'll wrap around the back here so you can see. And it's starting to fill up this bag. Coming along here, right into this bag. So this will just start to fill up. We'll give her a little bit more water pressure. But yeah. So as you can see, we got the starboard side full. I accidentally made that vent hose a little bit too long, so I'll have to correct that. But overall it went good. Nice. You can see that nice fitment in that compartment, fills it completely. So yeah, now we're on this side, filling up this one right here, the port one. Same process. We're just gonna let it run for a while and fill up, and then we'll check back in once it's all full. So we got it all filled up here. You can see they look really nice sitting in here, nice and compartmentalized, filling up that thing pretty much as it can. We are gonna put some extra supports on these so that they don't bow in so much, because that is an issue with these since it's a split panel. So we'll put some supports to give that some extra strength so we don't see that huge bowing effect. But yeah, that's what it's gonna look like if you were to order this. It's a nice plug and play kit for the 210s. It is quite a lot of work to pull the old tanks out, but they do come out with a little bit of tinkering and stuff. And then you could just throw some bags in and leave the stock pumps. But this makes it fill very fast. On the lake, these are gonna fill in about 3 to 4 minutes each. So, I mean, 800 pounds each, 880 pounds each in 3 minutes. It's pretty killer. This boat is ready to surf pretty much. We're gonna do a couple little adjustments to some vent hoses, change some lengths a little bit. That's why we do this type of thing, and make sure everything looks good before we are done with it. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it all. So we're gonna get the front bag filled up here as well. We just have some movement around to do with the fake lake, and we'll get that one filled up as well. And yeah, we'll take a look at that one. The last bag we need to test is this bow bag up here. So we're gonna get ahead and go on that. It gets fed through this inlet here from the belly tank that is in the floor. And then it comes up here, feeds this, and then we'll drain out the side of the boat over there. This really helps pull that nose down, especially with these big 880-pound bags. So yeah, let's get going on filling it. So we got that fake lake hooked up to the through hull down there. It is filling. The pump that is filling right now is this lower right one you can see running. And it is going to push the water all along the floor here. And then it comes up in to this hard tank. So you can see the through hull where it's coming in, it goes all the way down to that pump and comes back down through here. And then once this is full, it will push the water out through here, making it fill the bow tank or the bow bag up there. And then when we drain it, it will just all come back through here. We did add a pressure relief valve here. So you have to be careful with these tanks. They do flex quite a lot when you add these extra high power pumps. We don't want to crack that tank because to get that tank out would be a nightmare. So this will release pressure once it gets to a negative -0.5 psi. It will suck that open right there, and it will open and suck some air into the system so that it relieves the pressure so we don't crack the tank. But yeah, we're just gonna watch here and make sure nothing's leaking as we fill this up and go from there. So as you can see, the water is now flowing through that white hose up into the bow tank. And if I were to push this in here, we get some water out right there. So that is the vent right there. Water can't come out, but air can get sucked in under a vacuum. So we're up here at the front. You can see this bag is starting to take shape and filling out this compartment. Once it's completely full, it'll pretty much fill up the whole thing. So yeah, this is what it will look like once we'll touch back in once it's completely full. So everything looks good with this bow setup. We got no leaks coming from there. We did have a small leak on a hose clamp I forgot to tighten down up here, but this is all full, looking good. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and test out the draining and make sure everything's good there. But we should be all good to go. So we're here at the back of the boat. We're gonna drain these bags now and make sure that they hold a vacuum so that they will properly drain and completely suck all the water out, and suck all the way flat. That's why we have the check valves in place so that it creates a vacuum as it drains out. Yeah, it filled super well. Looks really great, as you can see. Nice and full. This hose, I'm gonna shorten a little bit, so that's why you see it kind of bowling up a little bit. I just cut it a little too long. But yeah, no big deal to fix that, so. So to drain it, it's a simple push of a button here. So we are gonna push the belly button right here and hold it, and it's gonna blink. That means we're going. You can hear the pump kick on, and we are sucking. So it will pull all the water out of this tank and pull a vacuum and pull all the water up from that bow tank as well. It will pull it kind of together, but this one will empty first. So now we got her all drained down. You can see this is completely sucked flat. There's no water left in this. So we pulled it all out with that pump, with that nice vacuum. That's what's great about these reversible pumps, is they pull a lot of vacuum, so you can run a little bit longer lines to things. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the ballast system on this boat. Just as a reminder, we added this whole system. We deleted the cooler that used to exist right here, cut that out to be able to put this bag in here. We also created this panel to talk to the dash. So the way this works is it's a simple relay panel. You have your inputs coming in here, and then depending on which one you press, it flicks a relay which sends power to the pumps. This gives us the ability to use the old system and the old buttons and not have to put all new stuff in. And then we of course replaced the rear tanks that used to exist here and threw in these big rear locker bags back here. So yeah, thanks for following along. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out and let us know what those are. Thanks. Bye.